TTB Music Podcast.
Whew, that was a long week.
That last 5 minutes was quite revealing.
Yeah.
It's a shame we didn't have the mics on.
It was, yeah. That changeover period.
That changeover.
So, metal. We were talking about metal last podcast, I think.
We were
cool.
talking about metal last podcast.
Let's start with some metal. Ish.
Yeah.
So, Halestorm Vicious, 4th album from the band fronted by Lizzie Hale. I liked this better than our previous metal album.
I guess it helps, listener, if you listen to these 2 podcasts back to back.
Yeah. Although that's probably because, you know, it touches things that I like. There's that whole kind of, it's kind of part Joan Jett glammy rock, bit of pop, Pat Benatar thrown in, and then occasionally dips into a bit of Foo Fighters. Gets off to a strong start, I think, with Black Vultures and Skulls, particularly. Skulls, which I really liked. That made me going, oh yeah, this is alright. I quite like this.
Yeah.
Then going to Uncomfortable, which has a good big riff, and then definitely starts going Joan Jetty and in the verse before coming back. Then got to Buzz, and at that point I was thinking, oh yeah, definitely, because I really like Buzz. Great track, great pop rock tune, really good. Then went to Do Not Disturb, which actually had me laughing out loud. It's proper metal sex lyrics.
Yes.
It's like this is the thing that I quite enjoyed about this album. It is an album that has a lot of relationship type stuff, but it's old-fashioned metal kind of relationship kind of stuff. Come up to my room, let's have some sex.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But from the ladies' point of view, of course. And so it starts off really well, and then it kind of goes a bit. But improved again towards the end. There were two ballads, which kind of one in the middle, one at the end. The one in the middle, Heart of Novocaine. Novocaine is an appropriate thing because they. Thankfully, the silence that ends the album is a much better tune on the ballad front. I found this a solid and enjoyable rock record. Have you written solid and enjoyable?
She written a solid rock album.
Yeah.
I've written rock! Exclamation. Rock. It sounds like modern metal with a great vocalist and a solid album. But actually, I mean solid in the sort of the good sense.
Good solid, as rather, yeah. Positive, thumbs up solid, rather
as
than
opposed to sort of the mere solid.
Yeah.
I was worried at the start that it was all a bit familiar, or a bit too similar. But actually, I think it hits a really good middle street. I shall go into further detail now. I really like Skulls as well. And agree with what you're saying with there's a string of tracks. Do Not Disturb. Yeah, a little bit of a horny record.
Yeah.
Conflicted. Sort of a post-horny record.
It is carrying on. It is kind of carrying on the theme from Do Not Disturb, straight enough.
And then Killing Ourselves to Live. Those 3 tracks in particular are probably my favourites across the album. Actually, I found the second half better than you did. I think, again, I just found that the variation in the second half, once you got past that really good middle street.
Vicious is quite interesting.
Yeah, I like Painkiller and Vicious. What I didn't like at all and you've touched on this, is the ballads. I just thought the album went completely off the boil when you got to the ballads. So Heart of Novocaine, which you mentioned, and The Silence at the end.
See, I didn't mind The Silence. I thought, but then again, maybe it's just because I thought Heart of Novocaine was so fucking awful.
I just thought, all right, so maybe The Silence was marginally better. I just found that when the guitars dropped and it was ballad time, I just no, just stick to noise, stick to the louder
upbeat stuff,
the upbeat stuff, the louder stuff, the sexy stuff. The sort of the warbly ballady stuff doesn't really work. So overall, yeah, good album.
We're moving on to the debut album from a three-piece who got together in Brighton University, two English girls and a lady from Iceland, I believe, who is the person that provides the vocals, perhaps unsurprisingly, if you listen to this record. So Dream Wife, Pete.
Well, funny, Dream Wife by Dream Wife. Funny again that you sort of mentioned, and I know this came up in the last podcast, which we did
ages ago.
It's that sort of, there was a very English sensibility in the pop again, not the pop so much this time.
Yeah.
In the punk this time, and again it just reflected a lot of the sort of differing styles. So yes, you had your sort of more modern, blistering, sort of West Coast take on punk, but then it really did call back to sort of that sort of pre-new wave era of punk. Perhaps got a bit, very much more of an English sort of feel to it. And I didn't know the composition of the band, so that I think that kind of comes through now that you sort of told me the composition of the band by nationality. Because vocally they don't sound like Brits.
No,
but clearly they are. Apart from the lead vocalist, obviously, and it just sort of covered all stops in between. So I got the whole vibe on this as well. The whole Courtney Love thing that we've talked about before. I got that. I did get the sort of get the sort of early 80s. New wave vibe as well.
Absolutely.
Of running through this. So yeah, it had that sort of sense about it. Now, actually, unusually, I haven't actually noted down what my favourite track was. I kind of like this. I kind of like this album. It was a very quick.
It is very quick
and easy listen, and an enjoyable listen, I should say. So yeah, no, I think good.
I got
I think
first time I was listening,
Yeah.
it almost sounded like a cross between Altered Images and The Hives.
Yeah.
Which is no bad thing as far as I'm concerned. It's good, two good, decent sounds to mix, frankly. I think the album gets off to a cracking start. First 4 tracks, particularly, I thought were great. Let Me Out is the most punky thing on the album. It's really in your face. But then you get to Somebody and Fire, which are both really melodic. However, then for me, the album kind of dropped off quite spectacularly in the middle. Not quite to mediocrity, but not far away from it. But then it kind of picked up for the final 2 tracks, which are Spend the Night and FUU.
Yeah.
Which were kind of back on track and really back in your face.
Yeah, ended well.
Bizarrely, it also reminded me, particularly at the end there, with that final track, of a band called Be Your Own Pet, whose albums I bought a decade ago, I suppose, and made me listen to them again this week. So, when I could have been doing additional listens to a couple of these albums, instead I was listening to my Be Your Own Pet albums. And I should say, for anyone that knows who that band are, track Becky, excellent. Moving swiftly on, although swiftly is hardly the right word to use for Catherine Washington's albums Heaven and Earth.
Oh my goodness.
So, for those who don't know who Casimir is, he's a jazz saxophonist, second major studio release. He has played bits on various records before. We've done tours for him before. A lot of people will know him more recently for doing all the sax bits on To Pimp a Butterfly, Kendrick Lamar's album, with another not short record, it has to be said. Also got his break, arguably, back in 2001, playing the iconic sax solo on Ryan Adams' New York, New York. However, this album is a double album, and then doubled again, because it clocks in at a spectacular 2.5 hours. Yes, that's 2.5 hours, kids. I know this is jazz, but seriously, Biggs, 2.5 hours. I should actually mention also that, bizarrely, the day after this album came out, the companion 40-minute EP came out for those people that clearly thought 2.5 hours wasn't quite enough. That wasn't us. Already, we have alienated most of you listening who are thinking, okay, I'm never ever listening to this record, or even half of this record. And that would be a shame in many ways, because whilst this record is really long, and it is really, really long, the man is a very, very talented musician. He's been criticised, bizarrely, in the cool jazz fraternity, because apparently he's not that good at improvising. So obviously a lot of jazz has been like, particularly if you go out and tour, you want people to be able to go, oh yeah, just go off and wander. Apparently he's not good at that. However, but I'd say he makes up for that by clearly being a strong musician, songwriter, and a very good arranger and visualizer. I mean, this album, the first album of the two, which bizarrely is Earth rather than Heaven, even though it's called Heaven and Earth, starts off with a very over-the-top reworking of the theme song of the Bruce Lee film Fists of Fury. And it's great. It's just like, it has all the kind of pomp and circumstance you'd want from the kind of thing, but with added jazz. And then that kind of moves straight from that into Connections, which is full of kind of prog rock, jazz rock fusion bits, as well as kind of things. So it's touching all the kind of aspects of modern jazz that you'd want, really. The problem, though, is its length. It's just most people are not going to listen to 2.5 hours worth of jazz. I have already made a 50-minute album of the two albums, of the bits of the tracks that I think are really good. So when it's good, it's very good, and he is very interesting, and I'm sure this will crop up on end of year lists simply because it'll be cool to have it on end of year lists. It may even be worth being on an end of year list, but most people are not going to listen to it, and they're probably not going to listen to it even when it's on end of year lists, unless they're already people that are happy listening to 2.5 hours of jazz at a time.
This album is so going to be on end of year lists, isn't it? It just has end of year lists written all over it. Could you lend me that 50-minute edit you've made, please, so I can finish this? Basically everything Scott just said. This album is very long. It's jazz. If you listen to half of it, you're doing well.
And the Star Trek-y bits in it as well.
Yeah. Oh, the Star Trek-y bits. There's like sort of 70s Las Vegas casino gangster sort of nights in it somewhere as well. There's Rat Pack in there in the background. There's lots going on. There's lots going on. It's very evocative. It sort of if you were talking about it as a film, you'd say it was world building. Very good. It builds environments. It builds places where this sort of music happens, and you can sort of it does put you right there. It's just one hell of a listen.
So you want a hell of a listen. That would look good on the side of the CD, wouldn't it?
They cut that quote at the end and said, "One hell of a listen." and that's why it'll make all those lists.
Yeah.
But I meant it more of an endurance.
Look out for this coming back up in our end of year lists.
I might just put it in there somewhere for a laugh. I might have even finished it by then. I'm the EP.
Now, of course,
3.5 hours of jazz.
this is what Pete. We're moving on. We're moving on to the next genre. Footwork.
Oh yeah, footwork.
RP Boo.
Yeah.
So tell me about your footwork, Pete.
So I can't. Right. So RP Booze. I'll tell you what I want is, as you have, if you have enlightened me, is RP Booze an originator of the footwear genre?
Yes.
Which I just heard about this evening.
That fact and the fact of the footwork genre, which I will confess I was also
It's been around since the 90s, you were telling me.
not apparently familiar with. There you go. There's one of the
early
things.
90s as well. So this album, a very varied and curious mix of beats, bass,
Yeah.
and spoken word. And I've said spoken word rather than rap. I mean, yeah, rap. It's
Well, there was kind of some rapping.
yeah, but it's kind of more kind of that sort of sampled spoken word.
Yeah.
You know, you could ask me to distinguish between the two. Let's be here another half an hour. But the bass, there's a lot of bass, a lot of bass.
There's a lot of bass. There's also a lot of very very high end tinny snare drums.
But I didn't mind the bass. The tinny snare drums, I'll take or leave. But I actually found the bass quite great. Second half, again, much more varied, I think, in terms of
definitely.
Yeah, I found first half a little bit. Okay, here we go. And the second half, interestingly, had more vocals in it, more samples in it, and
Bit of Stevie Wonder going on.
yeah,
One point.
exactly. So it had that, and it just felt that there was more to engage with in the second half, but that bass continued, and I love that bass. So, I mean, overall, I was going to say solid album, perhaps not the good solid, just the solid. But I mean, there are a few tracks on here I did like, and the "You Belong to Me," followed by
Wicked Boo.
Wicked Boo, yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. A lot of deep bass and some proper EDM to close out with as well.
Yeah, I'm the same. I wasn't getting on very well with the start of the album.
Yeah.
There's lots of random, disparate things not seeming to really gel for me.
And obviously Bounty sort of pulling one way or another by Blondie.
Absolutely,
well.
yeah. One of the highlights for me, in fact, I made a note of that. Got the kind of tinny electronic snare beats and stuff at the start. I was thinking, this is interesting in the fact that there's lots of stuff not really going anywhere, and I was kind of wondering what the audience was when I was first listening to it. I was thinking, I can't imagine anyone dancing to this.
You and me, Scott, we're the audience.
Yeah, I can't, and I don't particularly want to be listening to it. And then you get to the second part of the album that as you say, kind of comes slightly more alive, slightly more structured, slightly more focused. Actually, pretty much from Bounty on, when he was talking about the one way or another thing, the throwaway lyrical nod to that.
Yeah.
And that's full of dub style bass.
Yeah.
And from then on, it is a much more engaging and enjoyable record, because while you still have the some of the endless repetitivity that's prevalent in the earlier part of the album, it's suddenly now more interesting, and there's something else attached to it rather than just you thinking, oh my god, this beat's just carrying on, nothing's actually happening, shoot me now.
I never thought that, but we got that far.
However, as I mentioned earlier on, I would be hard pushed to say this was footwork genre, although him being the originator of it, then presumably it is. But I'd be even harder pushed to identify footwork genre in the future if I was here over the head with it, to be honest.
Blistering commentary there.
We finish with Laura Marling and Mike Lindsay, who joined together for Lump. Debut album stroke EP again. It's kind of a bit like anything. It's an album, but really it's more of an EP. Just kind of a slightly longer EP. Be quick because the pub's calling and
Really?
toilet's calling and various other things calling. But
I thought, yeah.
no, this is not. If you're,
It's not because we've been sat here for an hour doing
No.
2 podcasts or anything. No,
no, of course not.
because that was last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a huge divergence in sound for Marlin if you're already a fay with Laura Marlin's output. Although I think the way this album came about is it's mostly her lyrically and him musically. I like the kind of sparsity of the record.
Yeah. Know what you mean?
Because once you've still got that thing we've had from Laura Marlin's solo albums in the last couple of albums of hers, which that kind of blend of English folk and 70s West Coast American kind of music, that's still there for me on this record, but it's cut down, and you've got a whole album of based around very simplistic riffs, whether it's on the guitar or keyboards, but that kind of just turn into something beautiful through the delivery and the way the songs are constructed. So I think half this record is stunning, and the other half is alright. Late to Flight, opening track, May I Be the Light, particularly, and Curse the Contemporary, which is the 4th track. I think are all just outstanding tracks, and just adore them all. Particularly the simplistic guitar riff on I think Late to Flight. Just again, it's one of those repetitive things, but it's kind of almost hypnotic repetitive. And also has the best last track on an album ever, which is basically we're going to do the credits of the album as a song. So Laura Marlin's telling you who Laura Marlin is, who Mike Lindsay is, what they played, what they did, who else was on the album. So I just thought, you know what, I kind of like that.
I kind of get the joke, because in this age when most music is available digitally, you no longer have the little booklet.
Yeah, now they have the line notes
or whatever, telling you who does what. I find it a little bit pretentious, to be honest, but hey, if you enjoyed it, so be it. Yes. Late to Flight, Rolling Thunder, I really enjoyed.
Rolling Thunder's good as well.
Really enjoyed Rolling Thunder. It was probably my favourite track on the album. Sort of midway through, followed by Curse of the Contemporary as well. For me, this felt very much more of a Laura Marling with, rather than a Laura Marling collaborates and, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
This felt very much, if you're a Laura Marling fan, this is the latest album from Laura Marling.
Yes, I definitely agree with that.
Know, rather than
it doesn't fit. It would not feel out of place as if it had been released under her name.
Yeah, if it had just been her, and she released it as an EP, and hadn't told us at the end who was playing on it, we would have known nonetheless.
Yeah,
unless we bothered to look at the non-existent sleeve notes. So for me, it felt very much like the latest from Laura Marling, But yeah, again, you know, hey, artists do sing things that are sometimes a little bit different, a little bit interesting, and they want to separate that. So be it. That's great. Yeah, enjoyable EP / album. Well, let's not get into that debate again.
No, absolutely not.
So overall,
we
didn't do this last time.
Overall, this podcast, Pete,
this podcast.
my album of this podcast,
Oh
Pete,
yeah.
Actually, my album is quite difficult. Actually,
Yeah.
I would probably go. I'm just thinking what.
It's tough, isn't it? This one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd probably go with Lump actually.
Yeah.
But it's not a straightforward decision.
No.
Usually it's like definitely one or
no.
to their album. On this one, apart from RP Boo, which is not something that I'm gonna just stick on every now and again. Most of these things I can imagine listening to again. So
Yeah.
actually, quite difficult.
I kind of know what you mean. I mean, if it wasn't Lump for me, it'd be a vote between Halestorm and Dreamwife. Probably Dreamwife.
Yeah. And obviously, if those people
people that were counting.
Yeah, and for those people that missed the last podcast, then clearly the album of the podcast was that we both agreed was Camelot, the Shadow Theory.
It wasn't. It
Okay.
really wasn't.
Okay, no, it wasn't.
For me, it was somewhere between Nin and Sophie.
Uh,
Or Let's See Grandma. I quite like Let's See Grandma.
yeah,
It's a tough one.
you went on Northern.
We should have just left that one buried, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see, Grandma.
Let's See Grandma. Right, okay.
So it was Astral Drive.
Yeah, alright.